Also, we'll have some announcements at the end of the WebEx, so stay with us, and please send your questions and comments. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
Thank you, Rika. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lori Hansen. I've been with the Recruiting Solutions Project now for a couple of years. And I was asked to provide some information about the role of the hiring manager in recruiting solutions. So the objective for the presentation today is really to provide enough information for you to make a decision about the hiring manager role that has been developed in recruiting solutions and how it can be used by your agency. And then I'll also go into a little bit of a summary about the security that's in the recruiting solutions system for the managers. So one of our jobs, I think, as HR professionals is to build relationships with managers, especially in the hiring process. And we can work together to have an honest conversation and provide details about the appropriate job classification of the vacancy or the amount of time that we expect that it's going to take to fill the job, maybe where to post it. Sometimes our managers have ideas about where to post jobs. We can all really help to take the mystery out of the hiring process by setting expectations and laying out the roadmap for the manager before we post the job. I also think that our job is to trust the manager and to invite her into the hiring process. And we really start with that trust, and we help them to build their vacancy and really their capacity to understand the hiring process as soon as possible. In a good business partner relationship with a hiring manager, that person can really help us with our workload, and I would encourage you to get them involved to help to allow us to share in that workload. And as you know, managers have an investment in the process of hiring people, and they're really paying attention to what's going on, and they have some concerns, and I have a slide coming up where I want to talk about some of the comments that we received from them. And then finally, I want to be sure to communicate with you that Ann O'Brien, our Assistant Commissioner, wants all of you to know that she is a resource that's available to you if you need any kind of assistance with reporting problems or solving issues with the hiring process. In Ann's official capacity of overseeing enterprise HR, her division has oversight of laws, rules, and the policy structure for the hiring process. So moving on, I want to talk about the focus group that we had with the hiring managers and supervisors. Prior to the launch of Recruiting Solutions, we worked with management analysis, and we convened a focus group of hiring managers and supervisors. And some of the information that they gave to us was pretty interesting. One of the questions they were asked in that focus group was, what challenges do you have filling positions with qualified candidates? And under time to fill, they talked about the process and the length of time and losing really good candidates because the process takes too long. They talked about applicant pools, and we're concerned about just putting things on the MNB website. And it appeared to be, you know, that was the overall process. And why can't we post jobs in other places? And, you know, there are other good places to go, but nobody has really asked me about that. So they talked about our applicant pools. They talked about the secret book. I thought this was an interesting comment. There is a secret book with all of the HR rules, and we don't know them, and they won't tell us. Agency practices came up as well. Our HR will not help us navigate the system. Sometimes I wish HR would trust us more. The HR practice is inconsistent across agencies. This came up quite a bit. You know, what they learned at DOT doesn't apply at DHS, and those are just examples, but I think you understand what I mean. And so every time they moved or transferred agencies, the comments were it felt like they had to start over with the hiring process. And then finally, they talked about the process lengths and the quality. You know, there's too many sign-offs in the process. It can take up to 6 months to fill a job. They were concerned about applicant respect, I'll call it. When resumes were submitted. There was no feedback that went back to the applicants. And that comment was also something that we heard loud and clear from our community partners as well. So why am I telling you all of this information? It's really background information that I'd like you to consider when you're thinking about the decision that is before you. And that really is, how do I get my agency's hiring managers involved in the Recruiting Solutions hiring process? When we developed Recruiting Solutions, it was really a challenge for us to consider all of the varied and mixed practices agencies have with manager involvement in the process. But we listened to all of it, and the flexibility is really there for you to look at one of these three options. Allow full sharing of the hiring process between recruiters and hiring managers. Allow limited sharing of the hiring process between recruiters and hiring managers. And then finally, just don't let the managers participate in the automated process at all. So moving on, I just want to describe a little bit how the security process begins for managers. So each night, a batch job will run to grant or remove security access to those hiring managers. And this was done to eliminate the paperwork nightmare for agencies so that you didn't have to send in security access forms every time a manager came or left your agencies. But one of the things that this job will do is it'll grant the ability for the manager to create a draft job opening. And that's another decision point for you, is will your managers be allowed to create draft job openings or job postings? And what does that mean? What it means is that the manager can begin the hiring process by communicating with the recruiter what he or she believes should be in that job opening and on that job posting, and send an email to the recruiter and say, my draft job posting is available for you to look at. It posts jobs on the website. They are unable to recruit for applicants. This goes directly to the recruiter or somebody who has delegation of authority to post the job. So again, will your managers be allowed to create draft job postings? That's a decision point for you. And when you make the decision, the key about that is really to communicate that with your managers. So I also want to talk about 24/7 access to the system. And just like recruiters, hiring managers will be able to access information in Recruiting Solutions 24/7 through self-service. And in addition, hiring managers then will have access to a folder there that is the recruiting homepage, and it's got 4 items in it: create job openings, browse job openings, search job openings, and an interview calendar. And managers will have the ability to search the job opening for any jobs that are open in any state agency. And that was done to allow them access to other postings so that they can compare information in other agencies to their vacancy, really, and to help all of us maintain consistency for our jobs where it makes sense. And again, if you don't add your hiring manager to the hiring team, they will have access to the remainder of the folders, but all of the information in there will be blank. So when you use limited view, I'll call it, for your managers, they'll have access to information about applicants through something that's called the routing response page. When you set up your job opening, to make limited access work, you do not add the manager to the hiring team. So by doing that, you control what the manager is able to see, because then you can route the manager only the applications that you want them to have access to. And again, limited view, those the folders that I just talked about are there, browse job openings, so they can see any open jobs that are associated with the hiring manager. So again, the manager has been added to the team. Search job openings, they can see all the open jobs across the state. Create job opening, they can create a draft. Again, they can't post it, but they can create a draft job opening and send it to the recruiter. And then they can see an interview calendar where, for all of the interviews that have been scheduled for any of their open positions. So the manager can't see the applicant's resume, or excuse me, the manager can see the applicant's resume, application, and they can also access the job posting even if it is closed. So again, if you as the recruiter route to the manager applicants to evaluate, to decide whether or not they're going to interview them, they can see that applicant's resume, application, job opening details. Again, that's about the job and the posting. They can interact with the recruiter and respond back and forth about particular, there might be a question about a particular applicant. They can indicate interest about a particular applicant, or they can set up interviews. Any tracking that the manager does is available to the recruiter. The recruiter can change it, and none of the disposition tracking codes send any information off to the applicant. So in summary, if you're going to use limited view, don't add the manager to the hiring team, and in this way you can route specific applicants to the manager. So the next option is something that I'll call full view. And in full view, when you grant full view to the manager, what you do then, and this is again up to the recruiter, is you add them to the hiring team. And that will grant the manager full access to all of the applicants that have applied. You can still route applicants to the manager and provide specific instructions, and that process can remain. But when they have full access, they can see all of the applicants who have applied to the job. So in full view, the manager has access to everything that we just talked about that is in limited view, plus all of the applicants who have. So the decision for you really is, if managers should participate in the process, which view should you give them? And again, just to recap, there are these folders are available when the security batch job runs. The other option finally for you is to really look at, does this work for you or not? And you might consider not allowing your managers into the electronic process at all. And so again, the three options are available for you to decide. So really the next step is to make that decision. What I would encourage you to look at is that the system is new, and with it comes new opportunities to really examine our business process and to make changes. As Ann O'Brien reminds me from time to time, she says, you know, is once every 40 years too much to take, is that too much to take a look at our antiquated and outdated methods and think about what an effective hiring process would look like? And she challenges all of us, I think, on that question. So this decision really is up to you. So if someone were to ask me, Lori, you know, can you tell me quickly why I would use full view or limited view? And I think this is what I would say. If you use full view, you would want to do it for managers who hire frequently, and you could really get some efficiencies out of that process. If you need your hiring manager to assess the minimum qualifications, you know, the technical skills of the job are such that, you know, you don't have the expertise to make any decisions about whether or not the people that have applied meet the minimum qualifications, you can route the whole roster to the manager and have them take a look at it and make those decisions. So that would be the advantages of full view. So why would you use limited view then? If you're using limited view, it's really an electronic process that you control, and you can route specific applicants to the hiring manager. And the manager can indicate any kind of interest in those applicants. So again, all of this is in your control. When you make this decision, MNB doesn't need to be notified. You know, what I would say is start small and grow the idea. And finally, once you make this decision, you can make it really on a case-by-case basis. You can do it for one manager and not for another. You could do it by a particular vacancy, but not all vacancies. It's really up to you. And so the final thing that I want to talk about is that we will have a guide available for managers on how they can navigate through the system, and that will be available for all of our HR offices as well. So I will turn it back to Rika to talk about upcoming meetings.
Thank you, Lori. Our next HR Town Hall meeting will be October 30th, 2 to 3 p.m. We're going to be reviewing this same information on the role of the hiring manager in the hiring process. So if you have questions or if you've had time to think about it and want to discuss and hear what other agencies will have time for sharing at the meeting, so you can hear how agencies are handling the role of the hiring manager currently and if they're thinking about making changes. So there'll be a lot more information there. Feel free to join us 2 to 3 p.m. at the MSRS building in the training room. And then our next WebEx will be Friday, November 6th, same time, 9 to 10 a.m. Please watch for the invitation and the topic details to come out in the Recruiting Solutions newsletter that we've started. So all that information is in there. We are taking questions, so please use the chat to send us your questions if you have any on the role of the hiring manager and the information that Lori presented. We did get a question in, will there be tutorials for managers and interview team members?
If the question is about will there be information available for how the manager or the interview teams or whomever navigates through the system based on their particular role, the answer is yes. Do we have other questions?
Yeah, I saw there's another question. Okay, there's a question. In either full or limited view, does the manager add tracking codes that applicants can see?
No, they don't. They are unable to provide any kind of information on that roster that sends anything off to the applicant. What they can do is they can send emails to the applicants that are on that list, but any kind of tracking codes that are put on that roster are really between the hiring manager and the recruiter has the final say. The recruiter can update those codes, they can change them, they can whatever. And then when the recruiter does that and they make the final decisions, then there are some things that are updated in the applicant's My Activity page, and they can start to see two codes really. It's still under consideration or no longer under consideration.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Any other questions, please submit them. Again, we think that the system is going to allow a lot of flexibility for the recruiter role at the agency so that and for the hiring manager decisions, and you'll be able to adjust and change that access for managers depending on the situation. So, any other announcements here?
I don't see any other questions.
Yep.
Okay.
Janelle, any communications updates? We have Janelle Tummel, our Chief Communications Officer here.
Hi, everyone. We'll be sending out, as Rika said, a recap of this WebEx with links to all of the materials in the next newsletter, probably Tuesday, Monday, if we can get the recording in time. We've gotten great feedback from lots of you about the material in there and also we're continually trying to improve the accessibility of everything. So please keep sending your feedback. We really appreciate that. Would also love ideas or any feedback for the newsletter. We want to just keep sending out as frequently as we have information. I'm going to mention that Barb Wiemeyer from Revenue put together a nice presentation kind of overview of recruiting solutions that she gave to, they have a monthly manager meeting. And so we've asked Barb if she would mind if we worked with her to make that generic and make it available to everyone. If you want to give your leadership team and or managers a nice overview of recruiting solutions and have a discussion about it, this could be a useful tool that you could use and customize for your agency. So we'll include that in the next Recruiting Solutions newsletter as well. And then finally, I would just add, you know, this, I think we're hoping that you'll take this information back with your HR directors, your leadership teams, and have a robust discussion about what you want to do as far as the access going forward. That's what I have.
I guess we have a few more questions. Can you, Barb, can you let us know what the questions are that you're getting?
Okay, if you don't give managers access to create job openings, will they see that option in self-service?
Yes, absolutely. That's why you need to make the decision and then tell your hiring managers what the process is. Just because the tools are available doesn't mean necessarily your agency is going to choose to use them.
If an agency decides to use limited and full view on a case-by-case basis, how is access initially granted to the supervisor?
By the recruiter putting the supervisor on the hiring team for that vacancy. So that's one of the controlling features. The batch job provides access. It places the folder within the manager or supervisor self-service account. The folders are empty until the recruiter adds the hiring manager to the hiring team, and at that point, then access is granted.
In full view, can the managers see the demographics?
Hiring managers do not have access to employee demographic data, things like race, ethnicity, gender, those kinds of things. No, they do not.
Will there be a demo of the manager's view at the town hall?
I'm trying to think about that. A lot of our system is not live, and so we've got some constraints based on the availability of our systems outside of this building. We'll do what we can, but I'm not sure that we can do that exactly.
We might be able to share some screenshots though, of what it would look like, self-service.
We could do that, and that information will also be outlined in the user guide.
Right, which will be found on the extranet in the temporary hiring toolbox as soon as we have that ready. Any other questions?
I think some other meeting gets started.
Okay, that will conclude our session for today. Thank you, everyone. And if you do think of any questions in the meantime,